Hello everyone, welcome back to Unveiling Mythical Legends. Today we're going to take you into the story of Hercules, the legendary hero. His story is filled with strength and tragedy. From the glory of a hero to the inescapable fate he faced, Hercules' life is truly a tale that evokes deep emotions. Today, we'll dive deep into the tragic fate of Hercules and his final rise from despair, and how all of this led to his eventual deification. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss more mythological stories and in-depth analyses. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to give us a thumbs up and leave a comment below to share your thoughts. Also, remember to share it with your friends. Now let's begin today's story. The murder of Iphitus. The story of Hercules is always filled with the halo of heroism and the shadow of tragedy. After finally gaining his freedom, this invincible hero returned to Thebes, only to find his heart hollow, for he could not live a happy life with Megara. This emptiness stemmed from the fact that he had ruthlessly killed Megara's children in the past. Although he and Megara were still haunted by the memory of that tragedy, with her consent, Hercules decided to arrange for Megara to marry his nephew, Iolaus, as this was the only way he could atone for his past actions. However, Hercules did not find solace in this. Instead, he turned his attention to the daughter of King Eurytus of Achalia, Iole. This beautiful princess had once taught her how to use a bow and arrow in his youth. To him, she was not only a symbol of beauty, but also a cherished memory of his younger days. When Hercules learned that Eurytus had agreed to marry his daughter to him, he was excited, but the subsequent news made him doubt himself. Iole's archery skills far exceeded his and his 3 sons, which made Hercules feel as though he was being challenged. Not one to back down, Hercules immediately set up a contest and quickly proved that he was still the exceptional archer, defeating all of his opponents. However, Eurytus remained unmoved by Hercules' victory. The king was concerned that his daughter would meet a fate similar to that of Megara, which caused Hercules immense pain and frustration. In the end, he chose to leave, filled with disappointment and heartbreak. However, fate always plays cruel jokes on Hercules. The king's cattle were stolen by a thief named Autolycus, and Eurytus suspected Hercules to be the culprit. Though Hercules was innocent, his friend Iphitus bravely defended his honor and proposed that they go in search of the missing cattle. The two embarked on an adventurous journey together. But once again, the cruelty of fate struck. As they neared the city of Tiryns, Hercules inexplicably fell into a fit of madness, mistaking Iphitus for an enemy and pushing him off a tower, causing Iphitus to fall to his death. This event devastated Hercules, and he felt his guilt was unforgivable. He began a long period of wandering and repentance. Finally, during his travels, he arrived at the palace of his friend Admetus. In a fierce battle with death, he successfully saved Admetus' wife, Alcestis, from the grasp of the underworld. However, this did not bring peace to Hercules' heart. Instead, he sank deeper into guilt. He went to the Oracle of Delphi, hoping for guidance on a path to redemption, but the priestess refused to respond to him, citing his murder of Iphitus. In a fit of rage, Hercules prepared to force his own oracle, but this angered the god Apollo. A fierce confrontation ensued between the two, until Zeus intervened, separating them and using a thunderbolt to end the struggle. Eventually, Hercules' repentance was met with a response from the oracle. Pythia commanded him to sell himself into slavery for 3 years as atonement for his actions, and to give the proceeds to Eurytus as compensation for the loss of his son. Become a slave to Omphale. Hercules, the hero who was once invincible, finally yielded to the will of the gods and came to the queen of Lydia, Omphale. Under the guidance of Hermes, he was sold into slavery for 3 years. Omphale paid a sum of 3 talents, but Eurystheus refused to accept this money, which made Heracles' atonement plan somewhat complicated. Ultimately, the money was given to the children of Iphitus, which seemed to somewhat make up for past wrongs, although it could not fully heal the pain within Heracles' heart. However, in Omphale's court, Heracles regained his former vitality and bravery. He helped her rid the kingdom of bandits and completed various tasks that required strength and courage. During this time, he not only restored his physical strength, but also rediscovered his purpose, as if the soul of the hero had awakened once more. At this point, he participated in the famous Caledonian boar hunt and once again demonstrated his outstanding hunting skills and courage. This seemed to remind him that, no matter how many tragedies had occurred in the past, Heracles was still that fearless, brave hero. However, Omphale did not know that her slave was actually Heracles himself. When she discovered the truth, she was astonished and, in her surprise, decided to grant Heracles his freedom and offer him her kingdom. Her decision showed her admiration and love for the hero. In Omphale's palace, Heracles lived a life of luxury, fully immersed in the exotic pleasures and indulgences of the East. The hero who had once stood tall on the battlefield was now, under Omphale's favor, dressed in women's clothing, sitting at her feet spinning wool, listening to her recount past adventures. His life seemed to transform into an endless game of leisure. These days of Heracles were filled with contradictions and reflection, from a fearless hero to one who set aside everything for love and luxury. He seemed to have lost his former steel will, even losing himself in lust and pleasure. But this was not the end. Ultimately, as his period of servitude came to a close, Heracles rediscovered himself. He freed himself from Omphale's control, returned to the real world, and once again exhibited his heroic masculinity and vitality. Revenge on Laomedon and Augeas. Hercules' journey of revenge was undoubtedly a path filled with fury and justice. He gathered some of his brave old comrades, formed a fleet, and set sail for Troy to avenge himself and all the victims. After landing their fleet in Troy, Hercules led a fearless army to conquer the city. He personally killed Laomedon, avenging the humiliation and suffering he had endured in the past, and ensuring that the traitor king received the punishment he deserved. This victory was not only Hercules' revenge, but also a reckoning for the suffering he had experienced. With the death of Laomedon, Hercules took another significant step. He betrothed the king's daughter, Hesione, to one of his bravest followers, Telamon. This was not only a reward for Telamon's loyalty, but also a symbol of Hercules' appreciation for those who were faithful to him. When Hesione was allowed to release a prisoner of war, her choice surprised everyone. She chose her brother, Podarces. This decision put her in a dilemma, because by that time, Podarces had become a prisoner of war. Hercules told her that she must redeem her brother's freedom. Hesione, with a conflicted heart, eventually took off her beloved golden crown and happily handed it to Hercules as a symbol to redeem her brother. In Hercules' eyes, this was not just a gift but a form of release and rebirth from past suffering. At that moment, Podarces was given the name Priam, meaning the redeemed one. This not only marked the transformation of his identity, but also symbolized Hercules' forgiveness and renewal. However, Hercules' revenge did not stop there. He continued his march toward Augeas, determined to take vengeance on Augeas for his betrayal. This war was undoubtedly one of relentless and thorough vengeance. Hercules' army captured the city of Elis, and he personally executed Augeas and all of his sons, mercilessly destroying the family of the king who had once betrayed him. The only one spared was Phileus, Augeas' brave supporter and loyal defender. Hercules was not entirely heartless. He granted the vacant throne to Phileus, both as a reward for his loyalty and as a sign of respect for another hero. Heracles and Deianira. This time, Hercules arrived in Calydon, a beautiful land where he met Deianira, the daughter of King Ennius of Aetolia. Her beauty deeply captivated Hercules, and he was determined to win her love. However, this would not be easy, as Deianira's affection was not easily gained, and Hercules had to face a formidable opponent, the river god Hercules. Hercules, confident in his ability to change forms at will, believed that he could easily defeat Hercules. During their battle, he transformed into various shapes, from a serpent to a fierce beast, and then into a bull, trying to overwhelm Hercules with his transformations. However, all of this was of no use to Hercules. No matter how Hercules changed his form, his powerful opponent ultimately used his strength to break one of Hercules' horns, forcing him to admit defeat. This contest not only proved Hercules' courage and strength, but also showed Deianira his indomitable resolve. With Hercules' victory, he and Deianira enjoyed 3 years of happy life together. They shared moments of familial bliss, living a peaceful and fulfilling life. However, fate always brings unforeseen changes at the most unexpected moments. One day, Hercules attended a feast hosted by Deianira's father, Ennius. At a banquet, an accident occurred. Hercules made a sweeping motion, which was too forceful and unintentionally struck a young nobleman, causing his death. Although it was an unintentional act, the young man's father, who witnessed the entire incident, believed it to be an accident and absolved Hercules of any responsibility. However, Hercules chose to abide by local laws. He was unwilling to evade any responsibility and decided to voluntarily exile himself. This decision broke Deianira's heart, but Hercules, not only bidding farewell to his father-in-law, but also taking his wife Deianira and their young son Hylas with him, set out on his journey into exile. Their first stop was Trachis, the palace of Hercules' friend, King Zeus. Along the way, when they reached the river Iphitus, they encountered the centaur Nessus. Hercules crossed the river with his young son on his back, leaving his wife to be helped by Nessus. Unfortunately, Nessus was captivated by Deianira's beauty and, unable to control his desires, attempted to abduct her. Upon hearing his wife's cries, Hercules immediately realized what was happening. Without hesitation, he shot a poisoned arrow through Nessus's heart, killing the violator. Before dying, Nessus, filled with vengeful anger, told Deianira of a deadly scheme. He instructed her to collect the blood that flowed from his wound and promised that if she ever faced a crisis in her marriage, using this blood would prevent any enemy from taking her place. In this way, Deianira not only obtained a tool for revenge, but also gained a secret amulet to ensure that Hercules' love would remain hers. The death of Hercules. Hercules' final expedition was destined to be filled with tragedy. This hero, who displayed fearlessness and determination on his journey, ultimately could not escape the tragic fate laid before him. This time, his target was King Eurytus of Achalia, due to their rivalry over Iole. When Hercules learned that Eurytus and his sons had successfully won Iole's affection, but had refused to marry her to him, Hercules decided to seek revenge. Hercules gathered a formidable army and set sail for the island of Euboea, besieging the king's capital, Achalia. His assault was swift, and he eventually broke through the city's defenses, killing King Eurytus and his 3 sons. This fierce campaign not only destroyed the city, but also captured Iole, the beautiful maiden, who was taken back to Hercules' camp. For Hercules, this victory represented a form of retribution for the humiliation he had once endured. After the victory, Hercules stopped at Cenis to offer a sacrifice to Zeus in gratitude for his protection, and sent someone back to Trachis to fetch his wife Deianira and a robe for the sacrifice. However, when Deianira learned that the beautiful Iole had joined Hercules' camp, she was filled with anxiety and jealousy. Fearing that her own youthful beauty would be overshadowed by Aiole's allure, and that she might lose Hercules' love, Deianira remembered the words of the dying centaur Nessus. In desperation, she decided to follow his instructions and use the blood he had left behind. She poured it on Hercules' robe, hoping that it would protect her marriage. However, once Heracles donned the robe, all misfortune began to descend upon him. As he was preparing to make a sacrifice at the altar, the poison that soaked the robe began to take effect. As the flames rose on the altar, the venom rapidly infiltrated every fiber of Heracles' body, and he was racked with excruciating pain. He tried to remove the robe, but it clung to his skin, and no matter how hard he struggled, he could not tear it off. The agony only intensified. Unable to bear the torment, Heracles was taken to Trachis. His wife, Deianira, seeing the dreadful consequences of her actions, was consumed with grief. Overcome by remorse and unable to cope with the results of what she had done, she chose to take her own life, hanging herself in despair. At the brink of death, Heracles called his young son Hylas to his side, hoping that he would marry Iole, and instructed his followers to light a pyre so he could end his suffering. Yet, no one had the courage to follow his plea until his most loyal friend, Philoctetes, finally relented and set the pyre alight. Heracles' agony finally ended in the flames, and his soul ascended to the heavens. At the moment the fire soared, amidst bright lightning and thunder, Pallas Athena descended in her chariot, using it to take Heracles up to Mount Olympus. Hercules was granted divine status on Mount Olympus, becoming one of the gods. To honor this hero and symbolize reconciliation, Hera gave her eternally youthful and beautiful goddess, Hebe, in marriage to Hercules. His tragic fate ultimately culminated in his deification, but his story remains forever etched in human memory as a symbol of both heroism and tragedy. Hercules' story, from an invincible hero to the embodiment of tragedy, is undoubtedly one of the most thought-provoking chapters in ancient mythology. His struggles and repentance, his victories and defeats, ultimately led him to become a god on Mount Olympus. This conclusion is both a tribute to him and a reflection of the inevitability of fate. What do you think about the tragic fate of this hero? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed our content, remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you won't miss more amazing stories. Don't forget to share this video with your friends who love mythology, so more people can learn about Hercules' legendary life. See you next time, and thank you for watching.